Hello viewers and potential subscribers, you are watching Unknown Emerald and welcome to a tutorial which will show you how to make your very own Jax head from episode 9 of the Amazing Digital Circus. That finale was amazing, the scene with Jax getting the bow on top of his ear was perfection in my opinion, and in this video I'll be showing you exactly how to make it from scratch, so let's get to it. The very first thing you will need is a plastic sphere that can split into two halves. This specific one is 25 cm in diameter, and I'm going to try to put all the links in the description below so you can find them yourselves. If the links stop working, let me know and I'll try to update them. Jax's head is not a perfect sphere, which means you'll have to put something in the middle to widen the gap. To do that, I used some very thin plastic and cut a strip that is 60 cm tall and 8 cm across, and then cut some smaller strips which are as wide as a ruler is, just to reinforce it when I apply it later down the line. The sphere that was purchased is actually a decoration piece, which means it will come with a piece of plastic that hangs off to the side. I used a Dremel tool to cut that off and then used the same tool to sand the area down. The strips of plastic that were cut previously are now being used to put inside of the sphere. You want to put them like halfway of the width to be inside of it and then half of it to be out, and I used a piece of tape to secure it first before using a hot glue gun to stick it down in place. A hot glue gun will usually do the trick of sticking the two pieces together, but just to be extra sure, I added some smaller strips of plastic on the inside just to reinforce the structure a little further. Now that both halves of the sphere are ready, it is time to combine them. Using the 8 cm wide strip of plastic from earlier, you will be putting that in the middle between the two halves. Using a hot glue gun once again, you will be hot glue gunning the edges of both plastics on top of one another. Make sure that the surface edge is very smooth when you run your finger through it, just to prevent any bumps in the later stages. Now that the structure of Jax's head is complete, it is time to make a slot for your head to go through. This is the part where you're gonna have to do some measuring yourself because my head will be different size to yours, but just as a reference, from left to right on ear to ear, my head is 18 cm across, and then from back to front, from my nose to the back of my head, is about 22 cm, but you might have to readjust a little bit. I would recommend cutting the hole a little bit smaller, and you can always widen it if it doesn't fit your head at the beginning. I drew the rough measurements out on a piece of paper, cut them out, and then traced it on top of the plastic. You wanna then use the same Dremel tool from previous steps to cut the area out that you just traced out. Make sure to wear some goggles if I didn't mention it previously, just to be extra safe when you're doing this progress. And now, this is the part where you can be very creative with what you want to do with your version of Jax. I went for a specific scene from episode 9 where he had the little bow put on his head by Ribbit, which was an adorable scene, but as you can see in the thumbnail, on that specific mask I did not have a mouth cut out, but if you wanted to do that, you're more than welcome to do so. I had the same thing done with my previous versions, for example Made Jax and my Abstraction Jax did have the mouth open and the eyes were slightly different, so whatever you want to do, make sure to do it on paper first, trace it out onto the plastic and see if it looks alright, and if it does, cut it out with the Dremel tool once again, and then progress on to the next step. Oh, and whilst you have the Dremel tool in your hand, make sure to also cut the little slots for the ears in the later stages. It will make sense in a few minutes. And just before moving on to the next step, you want to make sure to sand down the entirety of the areas which you just cut out with the Dremel tool to ensure that when you put the mask on it is nice and safe and it doesn't cause any problems down the line. After all of the cutting out and sanding down, it is now finally time to add some color onto our favorite rabbit. Using this amazing material called adhesive stretch fabric, you are going to slightly peel off the very edge of it and start off from where the little slots for the ears are at the top of the mask. You're gonna work your way down, and by the way, this video is sped up by 20 times, so do take your time with the stretching out the fabric. You will be slowly peeling it off as you go along and then stretching the fabric onto the edges. It does take a long time and it does take some practice, so I highly recommend using a smaller piece somewhere else if you can, just to practice it before you do it on a final piece. And once you start getting to the edges of the mask, you're going to be folding over the fabric onto the inside of the helmet. You can use a hot glue gun just to reinforce it a little bit further if the stickiness is no longer as sticky as before. You're going to then flip it over and then do the same process onto the back of the helmet, meeting the seams as best as you can. And the final step is to cut a little hole inside of the middle of the eyes and then cut outwards using scissors towards the edges of the eyes, and then folding over onto the inside of the mask so that the eye holes are nice and clean. For this mask, Jax's ears are about 40 cm long. I used a piece of cardboard first before tracing them onto the foam to ensure that both ears are symmetrical, and the foam I used is 12 mm in thickness, and that is very important for the next step, so keep that in mind. You will then be cutting out another piece of plastic, but this time around use one that is slightly thicker than previously. I went for a 3mm plastic instead, and the reason why I went for a thick one is just to give the ears a little bit of sturdiness. You're going to use a heat gun to slightly heat up the edges of the plastic and create an L shape, which you will insert into the mask using the little Dremel holes that you've cut previously for the ears, and you'll be using a hot glue gun to secure them in place from the inside of the mask. And remember when I said to use 12mm foam, that was because I am now cutting out the little inside rectangle of that foam so that I can use thinner foam to create a little bit of a slot for the plastic to go inside. So essentially, if I'm using 12mm foam, I cut out the middle, then I put a 9mm foam inside of the place where the 12mm foam would be. The 3mm piece of plastic will then fit inside of that little gap and create a perfect seam so that when I put the backing felt on top of it, there won't be any bumps along the edges. I hope what I just said makes sense. If it doesn't, just follow the video, see what I'm doing, and hopefully it makes some form of sense. I'm not going to talk too much over how I made the little bow for Jax, but I will mention how I made the magnet. Meanwhile, just enjoy the process of me cutting it out of foam, applying the felt, and making it look nice and pretty.
One, two, three, four, counting every day. I've been stuck in here and someone help me get away. 5, 6, 7, 8 times just...
The magnets used for attaching the bow onto the ear were called the rare earth magnets. The ones I used were 1 cm in diameter and 3mm in thickness, but I stacked them on top to create a 6mm thick magnet instead of a 3mm one. I drilled a little hole inside of the area where I want the magnet to go into for both the bow and the ear, and then used something called the Aradite glue, which is a wonderful epoxy glue that ensures that things like magnets stay stuck to where you stick them to.
Just your imagination, the exit is your fixation. Door after door you'll find that it is just a digital hallucination. You try to find a way out, but you're stuck here day after day.
The next few steps involve attaching the ears onto the mask, and I know we're finally getting towards the end. Oof, this has been a long tutorial, this one. But anyways, just before I actually attach the ears onto the plastic bits using the hot glue gun, I first cut a strip of felt and stretched it across the ears. If I stuck them on first, then it would have been a little bit more difficult to do so, but you can do the step either way around, whichever you prefer. Using a hot glue gun towards the end, once the ears were stuck, I then cut another piece of foam, this time 1mm thick, in order to create a little bit of extra security to further reinforce the ears.
It'll be okay,
what's left of your sanity.
And some might call it tragic.
And the circus lost its magic.
I can't take it anymore. Is that it makes it die?
Just your imagination. The exit is your fixation. Door after door you'll find that it is just a digital hallucination. You try to find a way out, but you're stuck here day after day inside a digital hallucination.
One of the final steps in the mask progress was to add the eyes. The eyes themselves are made out of a mesh fabric which can be found in the description below, the links are all provided, and I used a vanilla color which I personally think works a lot better than a vibrant yellow because it blends in with the purple much nicer.
Just your imagination. The exit is your fixation. Door after door you find that it is just a digital hallucination. You try to find a way out, but you're stuck here day after day inside a digital hallucination.
Now that the eyes were added on, it is time for the final details, and this involves adding the pupils onto the eyes, for which I used some black sticky felt. I then did the exact same thing for the blush strokes, and as you can see from the video, I was just playing around seeing what works, what doesn't work, and this is the nice part of the actual process towards the end, where you can experiment and just do whatever you feel like works best for you. So once again, you don't have to do the specific thing I went for, be imaginative, be creative, and I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. The Amazing Digital Circus was a wonderful experience and I'm so happy to have been part of it over the past couple of years. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you know someone who would like to give cosplaying a go but doesn't know how to go about it, please send them this video because it will definitely help them out in one way or another. And if you wish to help me and my channel out, you can do so by liking the video for the algorithm, subscribing for more content because there will be plenty more on the way, and once again sharing the video with others. Thank you all very much for watching once again, and I'll see you guys next time, so see you!